Are you stuck in the same old routine at work? Do you find yourself hitting a creative wall, unable to see beyond your current perspective? It's time to break free and unlock the power of fresh perspectives. Hello, I'm David Gouthro, and I'm back with another episode of Discover Fresh Perspectives. And today I have with me as my guest, Rebecca Harvey. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you, David. Happy to be here.
So, Rebecca, one of the things we're going to chat about, and the way this actually came about, is that someone that I walk in Lighthouse Park with said, "Oh, you should talk to Rebecca. She really helped me out after her husband had passed away." And so we thought, a lot of people have probably heard the term executor, perhaps have been asked to be an executor for someone, hopefully well in advance. But I think there's part of a lot of misunderstanding about that. So I thought what we could explore is just what is the role of the executor and what are some of the important things to know about that role. So maybe first of all, if you could start out with what's an executor?
Mm-hmm. Good question, because not hardly anybody knows until they are one. You hear the word float around, and legal people may know, funeral parlor directors will know. But what is it exactly? Well, you don't know till you're in that position. And an executor, it's a position of trust, and it's a legal position of trust.
Hmm.
So if you're named in a will as an executor, you have what is called a fiduciary duty. So it's a legal duty and it has legal consequences.
So what happens if a person dies and they don't have an executor? So what's the reason for
Right.
having an executor? What's the default otherwise?
Well, if there's no will, then somebody has to deal with everything. And that could be public trustee, the government, if no one shows up.
Hmm.
But people can come in. It's a more difficult process and make an application to be an administrator. So they're
Okay.
doing the same thing, but they have a different title, administrator instead of executor. You're all already rubbing your head with confusion. Yeah.
No, but it also says that for an executor, something you have control over, you set that. Whereas if you die without a will or something like that, then you don't have really any influence over or how your assets are disposed of.
Well, no, the person writing the will who's deceased doesn't have any
Right.
control of it.
Right.
There are laws in place if you die intestate, it's called intestate, without a
Okay.
will.
Okay.
So there's a prescriptive formula that dictates who gets your assets. And they try to be fair. So children, dependents, they have a huge list and it's several pages in an act called WISA, the Wills and Estates Act.
Okay.
And you need to work it through. It's like a maze. Okay, so these people would inherit. These people get to serve as the administrator. So you
Okay.
have to go to court and make application to serve as the administrator. It's no longer no one's name. So someone
Okay.
actually has to go to court and make an application and say, I'm the son or I'm the daughter or I'm the spouse and I wish to act as administrator,
So
and see if the
you
court grants it to you.
so if you didn't have an executor, then it's probably unlikely that your favorite cat that you wanted to leave all your money to wouldn't get it. Government
Yeah,
probably wouldn't
that's
that high up.
not
So
gonna happen. Yeah.
So tell me about then the role of an executor. So you've now been appointed executor in the will. Now, what happens? Person dies.
Yes, a person dies. Well, as Peter, who I'll be speaking to later, says, the first thing that happens to you often is someone calls and says, what shall we do with the body? Peter had a friend in hospice. So you get a phone call, what shall I do with the body? And you think, oh, what shall I do with the body? And maybe there's the will specify, hopefully,
Mhm.
what funeral home, or if they wanted to be cremated, or if they wanted to be buried. So you have to call a funeral home and arrange for the body to be picked up and for funeral arrangements.
Okay.
That's your first task, generally.
And you mentioned Peter, but he's going to come in later. Maybe just introduce Peter so when we come back to him, people know who he is.
Okay. So I'd like to introduce my acquaintance, Peter Groves, who's also on this call, because he's an example of someone who went through the process of being an executor. And he said that it started with a profound shock when he got a call from a hospice saying, well, what should we do with the body?
Okay.
And he says, what should we do with the body? Oh, well, let me think. I guess I'll call a funeral home and make arrangements. That's the first rude entry into being an executor. If
Okay.
you haven't already made arrangements, you know the person, you've discussed it with them, and you know what that person's wishes are. So you're ready.
Okay. All righty.
Then what comes is you have to, the person's house where they live,
Mm,
you have to go through everything, sort it out, look for clues. What do they own? You have to make a list of all the assets. You have to secure everything. What if someone breaks into the house? Is it
mm,
insured? Is it locked? You're going to have to stop mail coming and put in a change of address. You're going to have to call credit cards and say that, please close this account. You're going to have to find prescriptions,
mm. Wow.
subscriptions to magazines, PayPal, close everything. It's a lot of work, like endless amount. You have to make a list of all the things. You have to look in people's phones if you can get in,
Mm,
or their email if you can get in, and see what bills are coming in, what to stop. You have to inform BC Hydro, Fortis, stop, or you can't not let the heat stop in the house till you've dealt with it, or the apartment. So keep it going, but change the account.
So it sounds there's a couple of things that are occurring to me, and one of them is so knowing that that's going to be part of the job. Then when you agree to be executor, you might want to have that conversation with the individual about passwords and things like that, right? So there's fewer surprises.
Absolutely. And a lot of people, there was recently a court case where a daughter had to go to court and sue to get the password for her mom's Apple ID. Apple would not give the password to the executor.
Oh,
So it has to be
hmm,
specifically in the will. I give you my passwords. Either that and name the account and the Apple serial number of the phone and everything. Either that or they have to give it to you in advance of them dying, right? They have to give you their passwords in the side or have it as an attachment to the will, because you're stuck. If you can't get in the phone, you can't get in the computer,
it's
you can't find their accounts, and you can't sell the equipment. Frequently, they're worth money, they're an asset of the estate, but it's worthless if you don't have the password. So just
so
even that one little thing is a problem.
yeah, yeah, now this sounds like a lot of work, and I imagine more complex it is. The more work's involved. So is this something that you do as a favor for someone, or does one get paid for being an executor? How does that work out?
Yeah. Well, it's a favor. You can get paid. Like if you're named, it's a real position of responsibility and legal liability because you're personally liable for any mistakes you made. And people have
Oh,
been sued and people have lost money to CRA has sued them. They're liable for taxes for the person.
wow.
So if you're the beneficiary, you're a daughter or an uncle, you probably don't want to charge. You may want to charge. There is provision for you to get paid. Firstly, if it's in the will,
Okay.
I authorize them to get 40 an hour, 50 an hour, percentage of the estate. But there's also provision in the Wills and Estates Act. And what the law says is up to a maximum of 5%
Okay.
of the estate. Now, everyone reads that and they think, oh, I'm getting my 5%, but you're not, because you have to go to court to get it or get all the beneficiaries to agree to it, which they often don't want to. And what is more
Hmm,
common than the 5% is 2.5%
okay.
or 3%. So whether it's 2.5 or 5%, it depends on the complexity and all the issues. There was one case where a fellow that the body hadn't been found for months, and he had to get a hazmat suit and contact WorkSafe BC and get a permit because it was a hazard to enter the place and
Wow.
put on all this equipment. So he wanted 5%, and the court said, nope, 2.5.
Oh,
Not extra bother. A lot of people have to remortgage the house, run around, borrow money to pay the debts. They do all these sorts of things, and for that you get your 2.5%.
of course,
So
these days with houses in Vancouver, that could still be a lot of money if
yes, if there is a house.
yeah,
If there isn't
exactly.
a house and they're in an apartment, you're kind of out of luck. But yes, it can be a good sum. Yeah.
So, tell me some more about what the executor does then. This is kind of scaring me right now, but I'm sure there's more.
Well, yeah, one thing you have to do as well the whole time is talk to the beneficiaries. So they, of course, are on the phone. Hey, well, tell me, am I getting the diamond ring? Am I getting the property? What's happening? When do I get my money? I want the clock. Um, I want this. So you have to juggle all that. You can't be pushed emotionally to jump of before when you're legally allowed to, or you get into hot water. We'll ask Peter about that later on. And you can't choose favorites. You
Okay.
can't make the determination. You can only go by what the will says. So again, your fiduciary duty, because if you think you have the power to sell their house, clean out their bank accounts, disperse everything, and so you have to be regulated and monitored. So if there is probate, that is the registry of the provincial government where everything is filed and everything is recorded because they have to have a record of what you did should anything untoward happen. If there isn't probate, then you still have a duty of loyalty, of acting in good faith, not to take care of yourself, but to take care of the deceased wishes and do everything the way the deceased wanted you to do. But there's not going to be an official registry kept of what you did.
So I know maybe getting terms confused here, mixed up. But so when you're the executor, do you automatically have power of attorney, or is that something separate?
No, something separate. A power of attorney is before the person dies.
Okay.
You can
Okay.
manage their affairs. As soon as they die, no more power of attorney, and your powers come from being the executor.
Okay. Okay. All righty. What else should someone know before they say yes?
Um, well, yes. Well, as I mentioned before, to know you're personally liable. So if you don't file the person's taxes in time and get them paid and get the debts paid, you can be sued and you are personally liable to pay that.
Wow.
So
Okay.
that's a big one. So you want advisors, you probably want a good accountant if you don't know what
Okay.
tax filings are. If you have any foreign
They
beneficiaries,
give you the whole information. I'm on. Oh,
i-
sorry. That's
yeah,
okay.
I don't
if
know.
if there's foreign beneficiaries, you definitely want an accountant with expertise in foreign matters and cross nation um, taxation issues.
Wow.
Or if you give money away, you send money down to the States, or in Peter's instance to Scotland, and it was before your time, you're liable. Maybe for $1 million, maybe less, whatever that amount was, or whatever amount Canada Revenue says taxes are paid for. Um, if you give money away unfairly to beneficiaries, favoring one or the other beneficiary can sue you.
Great. Okay, I'm
And
getting
they're
more and
not
more.
happy with you often because it's taking so long. What's wrong? Hurry, hurry. And one thing to know is doing that job often takes a year, could take 2 years. People, beneficiaries are they're humming and hawing. Well, it's been 3 weeks, it's been 2 months, it's been half a year. Where is it? I want my asset. And you
Wow.
have to keep them calm. You have to keep detailed records of every transaction, every bill that you pay that you're going to be reimbursed for if you pay it, or the estate's account is going to be reimbursed for.
So, so you talked about probate. Are there other things that we should know about probate? And I'll leave it up to you when you want to bring Peter in for his experience.
Sure. Well, other things to do is you have to do a will search. So you have to send a letter in to the Canadian government with all the aliases that the person ever used and say, what is the last record of the will? So you must perform this legal will search.
Hmm.
Because what if you're running around with an old will? Someone else has a
Yeah.
newer will, or there's a newer will in a safety deposit box or at some law firm. So you have to make sure you have the right will. You have to make sure it's signed properly. Um, you have to go to the bank and all the bank accounts and write letters and get the bank to tell you what accounts did he have or she have. And you have to go to, sometimes they're held by financial houses, like you have money in stocks. So
Okay.
you have to find those and get how many assets they owned and in what name, because you need all the assets of the person and all the debts of the person.
So I have a hunch that listeners are not writing all of this down, Rebecca. Is there a go-to resource to find out what the role of an executor is, what your legal liabilities are?
Yeah, there's lots of resources online. The People's Law School has put out a very good handbook.
Mm.
There's lots of letters or on different law firm sites that has a checklist, and different financial houses like uh, TD Trust and most of the banks, Royal Bank, they'll have a list.
So I'll make sure that we put some of these resources in the program notes, so if people want to look it up,
Uh-huh.
they can find it.
Yes, yeah, that would be
Okay.
good because you do need to read a couple of books, small booklets to even start before you start, which is which is why some people, they're in grief. They've lost their spouse or their mother or their child, and now they have to face this massive exercise, which is like filing taxes as well as clearing out a home, as well as selling everything in the home and disposing of everything in the home, as well as being Sherlock Holmes, as well as complying with all these little minutiae of legal
I,
detail.
I'd be willing to bet that the vast majority of people who have been asked to be an executor say yes without fully understanding all of this. I'd be willing to bet.
Exactly. Yeah, and I was at a workshop once, and the fellow was saying, "How many of you have done probate?" And about 4 or 5 hands went up. And he said, "How many of you would do it again and be an executor again?" Not one hand went up. People
That's
are holding their head going, "No, no, no." Once in a lifetime is enough to put anyone off. So, um yeah, and if you do have to file probate, then there's a list, there's like 14 different affidavits that you have to file, and
wow.
all these notices that you have to give out in proper timing and format with a copy of the will attached, not only to anyone who is in the will, but
Hmm.
also to anyone who, if the person had died intestate without a will, could have been entitled to it, which is grandmothers, nieces. It's enormous. And you have to send that out in writing to people and give them 21 days. So a lot of people just go, okay, I have to tell people that what's in the will, and they just call people up. By the way, you're listed in the will, and you'll be getting. They don't give 21 days notice. They don't do it in writing. They don't give a
Well,
copy of the will. So they've already goofed. They're already liable.
so now I know that you invited Peter here because he was going to, I don't know, make the case for using an executor or or a consultant or whatever. So
Yeah.
what do we want to hear from Peter, Rebecca?
Okay. Well, what we want to hear is Peter did it right. Peter went to an estate lawyer and then another estate lawyer and had an accountant and still ran into hot water.
Wow.
So I'll let Peter tell you his story.
Okay, Peter, over to you, and thank you very much for agreeing to be part of this.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's not to be too long-winded about it. It's I my friend didn't have a will. He's in hospital. I say, I'll find. Do you have a will? No. Okay. I went and got a lawyer. He came to the hospital. I got a friend to come up because now the nurses, I don't know in other provinces, have been told to not act as a witness. So you have to bring your own independent witness into the hospital to for the will to be witnessed.
Okay.
And of course, so the lawyer that made the will, which happened to be what they call a blind will, and a blind will has no information, no executor fees, no power of attorney, remuneration, or anything like that. Just the who gets what, and that's it. And so when my friend died, shortly after the will was made, uh, I retained this same lawyer. He wanted $8,000 to get it to probate. I said, okay. I gave him $8,000 out of money that from my account, knowing that I would be paid back from the
Okay.
estate. There was assets, there was a house involved. So I wasn't concerned that I wasn't gonna get my money back, and what I did is that I created a line of credit from the bank,
Hmm.
so then I wasn't liable for any interest. I didn't have to go through the process of charging interest or anything like that, and, so the banks I just paid the bank the interest for the money that I borrowed through the line of credit. This lawyer ran into trouble, I don't know, personal trouble, and had to resign his or retire. And so then I retained another um, estate lawyer, advertised on local radio as an estate lawyer. And again, it's like I felt like he wasn't really hearing me. The first lawyer told me I was entitled to 5%, even though was there, wrote the will, even though it was a blind will. The other lawyer, I said, well, I thought I was entitled to 5%. He said that he thought that that was unreasonable of me. And, um, and I didn't know any better.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know about this 2.5% or 1%. And, um, the, he said, I'm going to need an accountant. I said, okay, I'll use my accountant, for the last 30 years, I've used the same accountant. And he said, why don't you just make it easy and use the accountant upstairs? I said, okay, just to keep it all in the same building and it's easy. Maybe they've worked together. It's just better, maybe. So I said, okay. And it's like, use that accountant. It's, I, d- and it's like, I ran into trouble. I ran into trouble because the I made apparently the most common mistake that executors make, and that is distributing the money to the beneficiaries, after selling the house and paying the taxes,
Hmm.
because you have to pay a certain percentage to get the probate.
Okay.
So if the house is worth $1 million, you have to pay, the up to, I can't remember what it is, but the first $50,000 you pay us 14%, and then there's after that you're paying a lesser percentage, and then as you give them I think it was like $17,000 at the end of the day. As you give them the BC government the $17,000, they give you the probate.
Okay.
You have to fork over another money all the time, and so, okay, then I did that and then, had the probate. The accountant adjusts where the money goes, what beneficiaries get what. I was informed I should hold back $20,000 for potential taxes that need to be paid at the end of the um, end of the process.
Mhm.
I said, okay, well, let's hold back $45,000 just to have a cushion and doesn't make any difference. And the accountant gave me these numbers that I was had to disperse the money and where it goes, after cleaning up the house, borrowing the money. paying the line of credit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He sent me another list, an amended version of disbursements, and I thought, well, I'm there now. It's done. I have $45,000 in the account for the tax man, double what the lawyer suggested. I dispersed the money. I sent everybody the two got somewhere close to $400,000, and the rest got $10,000, and a couple got $5,000, and there was money left in the account for everybody, for the
Mhm.
tax man. So I thought everything was good, and suddenly I get a telephone call from the second lawyer, and he says, "Oh, by the way, it's like, have you dispersed the money?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "Oh," which he knew that I had because of talking to the accountant, and because I'd paid the accountant as well, and um, and he said, "Oh, just there's something that you shouldn't have dispersed the money because now you're liable for the taxes on the $800,000 that you've sent to Scotland.
That
It's
you
and
personally
that's
are.
that I'm
Wow.
personally liable for." And I said, "For how much?" Around $200,000, he says. And I said, "Oh, okay." And it's like, I was shocked, of
Mhm.
course. And he said that I was to stick handle that, which was his words. And it's like, okay. And it's, so I contacted the beneficiaries. I said, "There's been a mistake. It's like, I shouldn't have sent you the money. You have to pay taxes on that. Can you send the money back to Canada? And, we'll just, pay the taxes, and then whatever's left, we'll send it back to you." So rather than send over the $200,000 that was estimated in taxes, they sent $180,000. Okay, fair enough. There's still $45,000 in the bank account. Everything's going to be okay. Then it's like, I asked a few questions to the second lawyer, um, and he said that he didn't want to represent me anymore and that I should retain another lawyer. I said, "Okay." It's like, and now I'm really thinking I'm in trouble.
Yeah, what a nightmare.
If I had used estates made a nightmare. If I had used estates made simple in the beginning, I wouldn't have run into all this trouble, but I
And sorry,
didn't.
who is Estates Made Simple?
Rebecca Harvey.
Oh,
If
okay.
I'd Somebody suggested I should talk to Estates Made Simple,
Okay.
and it's like, which I did, and it's like, and she found me another lawyer, actually a list of lawyers, and I interviewed them to see if I could work with them. Now I had a bit of experience of dealing with estate
Mhm.
lawyers, and it's like, and found me an international beneficiary accountant, and he informed me that Canada and Scotland has a treaty,
Oh,
and taxes aren't required. It's tax free. So now it's like I still didn't. So the money's now with the second lawyer who isn't representing me, and they have the money that was sent back from Scotland. So the money, they didn't send the money back to the account, to Richard, my friend's account. They sent it to the lawyer, or send it to me, and I could have put it into the account. They sent it back to this lawyer who wasn't representing me. He held that money for 72 days and then gave me a personal check in my name for the $180,000, which I could have done, put it in my bank account, and
mm.
I don't know what I could have done with it. But it's like, it's like suddenly, what am I? Why is he giving me that money and not the estate? So lots of pitfalls, lots of traps set up, and I found a lawyer in another sort of town, and that I felt he had mediator after his name, and I thought, oh, I could do with a mediator rather than a lawyer, and he did a good job. He wrapped everything up, um, and everything was finalized, and it wasn't an issue. But it's like if I hadn't, if I had, like I said, if I hadn't have found Rebecca, um, and at the beginning, I wish I'd found her at the beginning rather than once I've got into all the trouble that I got myself into.
So, and now are you out of trouble now, Peter?
I'm out of trouble.
So thank you very much. I'm sorry I had to go through all that, but just to take this as an example, Rebecca, can you talk about just what the services that pardon my language, that you do, just as kind of maybe to close off here, so people know how they could avoid some of what Peter unfortunately had to go through.
Yeah. Well, what we do is we help executors go through probate, and our job ends there. But I think people have a choice when they do probate. They can do it themselves.
Mhm.
And a number of people do try and are successful after great struggle. Even the brightest, most tech savvy online people struggle. You have to read a lot of literature. It's like doing your own taxes, but more, much more. And there's not the same manual information and software to help you. So doing it by yourself is one technique. Going to an estate lawyer is something a lot of people go to, which can be very good. There's a lot of good estate lawyers. Um, I think one issue with lawyers is like doctors. It's a lot more formal and businesslike. So you have an
Mhm.
appointment, you go and sit in, you have your time, the clock is running. It's almost like at the doctor's office, you're allowed one question. So I think the issue with Peter is you feel a little intimidated and you
Mhm.
don't feel they're listening to you and you're afraid they don't seem accessible and you want to ask questions. Oh, I'm being pushed to send money to the beneficiaries in Scotland. Can I pick up the phone and say, should I do that? Can I do that? And you feel it's not comfortable to do so. So I think people that use a service such as ourselves, which is a more hand holding. We work with you as a team, as a friend. You don't just make an appointment. We come to you and we follow up with you all the time. How are you doing? Where are you at? Can we help you? I'm not even sure that Peter got an instruction letter, which we certainly send out in bold with yellow highlight. Do not do this, do this. And we follow up with the person periodically. So using an estate lawyer, as Peter did, a lot of people just go to the where the will was found, which is at a lawyer's office, and almost every lawyer does wills, but not every lawyer does probate. So they might do it intermittently, and they might not know as much as an estate lawyer. So they're likely to get bogged down. But maybe not. Maybe they're very efficient. And because they're lawyers, they have real estate, they have an office, they have overhead, they have paralegals, and you're going to pay top dollar. As Peter said, he paid the first lawyer 8,000, and by the time he was through, he had paid 3 lawyers about 8,000. So services like us, because we're mobile and we don't have rent overhead, we are about a third the cost of what a law firm is. So that's another option for people. Um, and people like the one-on-one intimate connection often. And then there are software packages. A lot of funeral homes now are starting to set people up with a software package. So
Mhm.
it would be like doing your own taxes. So they'll give you the forms, and they may walk you through a bit of it, and there's always a helpline. But Peter wouldn't have known to call and say, "I'm thinking of dispersing this money," and the company doesn't have a full historical background of your file. So they're not going to know all the beneficiaries are in Scotland and you need an international estate accountant. Um, so I think it's a little sketchier, a little more dangerous to use software, but it is an option. And then there's big trust companies. So Royal Bank or TD Trust, any of the big banks or big accounting firms. And what they do and what some lawyers do is they charge 5% of the entire estate.
Mhm.
So it's going to cost you considerably more.
So there sounds like there's a couple of things that we can take out of this. One is that, to really think if you don't have a will yet, to get a will, to be very thoughtful about getting an executor. When you're asked to be an executor, to really understand what the role is before you say yes, and certainly then to know what your rights and responsibilities are and all of that. And that there's a number of different ways that things can be handled. That fortunately, there's services like yours. What's the category of those services called, Rebecca? Like, what's the umbrella?
Oh, we're probate help or executor help. We help people file their probate.
Okay,
But
so
you're right. All the work pre-planning before you're gone and your will, that's a whole other area, and there's experts in that field as well. But to have everything in place prior to you passing is essential, and there's people that have kits and books, and you file the documents, and a whole other book to read with lots of good information.
Well, I'm sure there's some people out there that are thinking, I should start to be thinking about this sooner than later. Others that it's still pretty far off, but I think it's really important information that people understand. And we'll put in the program notes your contact information as well as some of the other resources. So I'd like to thank you and Peter very much for being here today. And I'm glad that Peter is through his nightmare with your assistance. And next week, I have no idea who we're going to have as a guest next week, but it will be someone different and with some different perspectives. So again, this has been David Gouthro with Discover Fresh Perspectives. Come on back next week. Subscribe now, because on Fresh Perspectives, every episode is an opportunity to explore new horizons and redefine what's achievable.